Okay. Folks are starting to join us here at the end of the day on Wednesday. It's a Wednesday, right? Um, I'm so excited for this conversation. Maybe we jump into introductions while folks are logging on, while folks are finding us, because there's so much meat for us to dig into and so much substance for us to discuss here. Do you want to start with an introduction, Katya? Oh, wait, you're still on mute. I muted you. I'm sorry.
Okay, how's
Yeah,
that? Can you hear me
you're
now?
perfect. Yes,
Okay,
you're perfect.
amazing. I'm so excited for this conversation. Hi, everyone. I'm Katya Libin. I'm the founder of KL & Co. and the co-founder of Hey Mama. I am a holistic executive and leadership coach, and my mission is really to guide founders and executives to really rediscover their joy, purpose, and sensuality so they could foster abundant lives and thriving companies. And this conversation is very near and dear to me because I was in sales for my entire career before I started Hey Mama. Then led us through a big fundraising round and felt like there was just a ton of business development, partnerships, etc. And now I work with so many founders and execs that are the rainmakers, the business development arm of their businesses, and just feel so passionate about feminine leadership and intuition and the kind of the feminine powers while we're in this sort of go system, and we're trying to find ways that really work for us. So I'm excited to learn from you and to dive in because there's a lot here on how to harness your intuition for business development that like fuels you and doesn't deplete you. So happy to be here.
Yay.
That's me.
Yay. I'm so excited. And I agree. Amazing topic. We're so excited to have folks join us for this discussion because frankly, it's one that doesn't happen a lot. And certainly it's one that I don't see happening a lot on LinkedIn, but it is an important business topic that we need to make space to discuss. Quick intro, I am Leslie Vanez. I'm the founder of the Sales Led Go to Market agency. And then I have a couple passion projects that I am pretty smitten with. One is a business book club to focus not just on skill sets, but mindsets, things that make us whole people, and also an events brand, which is interesting because it's a lot of what prompted me. What made me feel called to start the events brand is that I was seeing sales events as we came out of the pandemic that were very masculine, very bro-y. We know historically that most sales training frameworks, methodologies were made by white men for white men to sell to white men, and they just don't
Yeah.
have the same fit for purpose, or they were events because sales is B2B sales is still predominantly male. They were events that were predominantly male environments with a lot of heavy drinking. So I
Mhm.
created what I wanted to see in the world, which was an answer to that. So I'm so excited to dig into some of those concepts of like, how can we find our calling as women in business, as women in sales, and how can we trust that inner knowing? How can we not just trust it, but like embrace it and go
Yeah.
all the way in? So maybe to start, let's take a small step back and talk about getting set up to like be in that flow, to be in a place where we can listen, where we maybe have enough silence to be able to really tap in. How do you get in the flow?
I love this question. Well, to start, I feel like women are meant to be in flow. We are like feminine energy is very flowy. It's not trying to like control everything and like, just like make and coerce and force. Like we are just meant to be like this wild river. Of course, the river needs guardrails because that's how we balance the masculine and the feminine. And I find for me in the morning, you guys will have to forgive me. I have this little lingering cough, which maybe a lot of you have been sick the past month, so bear with me. But um, I'm going to sound basic when I say this, but meditation always helps me set up for the day. But the other thing that does that is for me really powerful is movement and specific types of movement. So dance, walking, things that create momentum, things that create energy and motion are where I feel the most inspired. So anytime I'm able to like get moving and like actually feel in flow, that's typically when I feel like I'm really well set up for the day. I mean, I obviously need my tall iced coffee. I obviously need like a great setup, but I'm one of those people that can get in flow at any coffee shop, at an airport. I don't need like a hyper controlled environment. What I need is like my body to feel good and my intention and clarity for the day to feel like I'm connected to my purpose and I'm creating that like inner momentum, which I know we'll get into. So that's me. But how about you? How do you get in flow for the day?
Similar in terms of the meditation. I start every single day with a meditation. I just use the Calm app, like calm.com. I do the Tamara Levitt meditation. And you know what's so interesting, Katya, is that I've been meditating for about 5 years, and I, for so long, struggled to get out of the mindset of there being like a right or best way to meditate,
Yeah,
right? And I think that a lot of people that have a meditation practice
totally.
been there. And what I found works for me is to meditate lying down.
Yeah, I did that today.
Like that's the way I want to start the day is the first thing I want to do with no temptation to get distracted or check a message or do anything else. I want to immediately just get my mind focused. And then recently I added 10 minutes of breath work before I do my 10-minute meditation. So it is just this beautiful space I hold for myself every morning. I also try to stack that with maybe a Blinkist or an audiobook or a podcast, which is less about the content I'm listening to, and it is more about delaying checking social media for as long as I possibly can, so that
Yeah.
I'm not wiring my brain to like seek that social media dopamine hit
Hmm.
first thing in the
Oh, yeah.
morning. So getting in the flow state for me is giving myself permission to start my day by being exactly where I am and not anywhere else.
Hmm.
And by giving my mind some time to kind of wander a bit before I actually tell it, all right, we got to focus. Let's do this.
I love that you said that, and I didn't mention it, but I have made a commitment to myself that I would not use the phone for the first 45 minutes of the day, and I'm going on 45 days of that commitment, um, which has made a huge impact because when I'm waking up first thing, I already know that that's a commitment I want to honor. So I'll leave my phone and then you go to make yourself a cup of tea, you connect with that cup of tea. The cup of tea is life. Like that's all you need to do is just drink your tea, let things come in, but not let your brain go on the mode that we get in when we're on our phones. It's just not sustainable. And I think if we're really honest with ourselves, it's addictive and it's seriously distracting and harmful, I think, for our ability to be in our feminine and be in our radiance is that addiction to the next hit,
It's a
the like, the
distraction.
comment, the email, the
Yeah.
win,
Yeah.
so it's like an
I'd love to
unprogramming.
hear from folks joining us if they also start with
Yeah.
meditation, or maybe breath work or movement, or maybe they've also made a commitment to themselves to not check their phone for social media for a time. If anybody has morning routines that help them get in the flow that they're comfortable sharing in the comments, we'd love to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that's been incredibly powerful in the morning is Kundalini because it combines breath work and Kriyas together. So if anyone is interested in Kundalini or has ever done any Kundalini, there's an incredible teacher called Meg Sylvester, and Ashley Logan. We know her in common. She actually introduced me to Meg, and she has a great portal where she shares daily kriyas, and the kriyas are, it's like it's amazing. There's a kriya there that they did a study on that's 11 minutes long, and they tested people for 45 days doing this kriya every day. It's like Sata Nama, and it's different versions of that. And they said in 45 days, the people who did the kriya were significantly less depressed, happier, more focused, more balanced. So huge shout out to Kundalini and the impact of these simple 10, 11-minute kriyas, and the impact they have on rewiring your brain.
In 45 days. And I
Yeah.
mean, shout out to the human brain that literally has the capacity to create new neural pathways for us.
Oh, yeah. So quickly, too.
Wild. It's wild. We have some other great ways to start the day, listening to a prayer. That's incredible. I know a lot of people that start with an affirmation or a series of affirmations. We were sharing off camera that I recently read Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty, and one of his suggestions is to actually record yourself saying affirmations and then just play your own voice back to you, which I thought was really interesting. Doing yoga, so somebody else that is with you in that movement. And then we have making sure that you're setting yourself up the night before for success the next day, which I love. I love all of those ways to create space to be with yourself, and to start the day by listening to that inner knowing. That's incredible.
Yeah, I think there's something powerful about reshifting the times that we are in flow and opening ourselves up, that like we could be in flow from 1 to 3. We could be in flow from 7 to 9 a.m. Like, finding that time where you feel like it's just kind of pouring out, especially we're talking about business development. So getting in flow for business development might be different than getting in flow to write, right? So like you might want a dance party in your living room to get in flow for reaching out to a bunch of people that
Yes.
you want to cultivate relationships with. Or for me, my big breakthrough happened when I realized that voice notes are my love language, and I can go on walks and be in nature and then just like drop in and send these super cool voice notes to people that I'm building relationships with. And it felt so effortless and organic to me. So I'd just be curious of like, what hypes you up to get into that state where you're in flow, but also like there's that other bit of, it's like that inner momentum. Like, how do you create that inner momentum for yourself? Where does that drive come from within?
Oh, I mean, I'd love to hear from the folks that are joining us if they have like that walk-in song or that thing they do that just gets them going. This is not what gets me going in that way. Like, I'm not going to do this and then get on a sales call. But I have to tell you something that I discovered about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now. I spent an entire year really carefully tracking my cycle when I was journaling, in terms
Yeah.
of just how I felt, and like not just how I felt, but like what I felt called to, what came easiest to me at different times. And one of the things that I uncovered is that the like 3 and 4 days out from when I start my period, my brain is on fire. It is like my creative juices are flowing. It's like this weird time where I was like looking inward, and I'm about ready to go into a period where I like really prioritize nesting and self-care. And I have this like 48 to 72 hours where it just pours out of me, and I create a ton of content. And so what I started doing about 2 years ago is I hold that time for batch creation.
Yeah.
And so I create pretty much all of my LinkedIn content for the entire month and a lot of my TikTok content during that 48-hour period where I
Mm.
am just aligned to my hormonal cycle.
Oh, that's so powerful. I worked with a amazing client last year. Her name is Elisa Vitti, and she created cycle syncing. She wrote the book on it called In the Flow and Woman Code. And I got like a, yeah, I worked with her last year. She's incredible. She
Cool.
is, yeah, she's a legend. I always would tell her, I was like, do you know who you are? Do you know what you've done? You know, like what you've created is, and I kind of got a front row seat to understanding that. And I've started to read the book with my daughter because she's having some real hormonal challenges. And I think where this kind of goes into like listening to the body. Like one of the big pieces of advice I give to women when I'm working with them is like really bringing the intuition and the knowledge back down into our body and out of our head, right? So where do we feel things in our bodies when we're talking to someone on the phone, when we're pitching a deal, when we're actually just meeting someone for the first time and trying to understand, like, is this a door that I want to open? So I'd love to hear from you. Like, how do you listen to the wisdom of your body when you are approaching partnerships?
Hmm. Um, so I think one of the things that's interesting about really thriving in sales, this isn't just sales, but sales is what we're talking about today, is that it does require you to gently push against your boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the ways that I listen to my body is because I struggle with anxiety. I have a panic disorder, so it's easy for some of those emotions to become very internalized in a physical reaction. So one of the things I try to keep in mind is the balance between pushing myself, so I'm gently pushing against my boundaries, which I know is going to lead me to feel uncomfortable, but never pushing myself until something feels icky and uncomfortable usually means that maybe I'm like sweating a little bit. I'm like a little bit red in the face because I'm like, ooh, my adrenaline's pumping. Icky is in my stomach
Yeah.
where I feel unwell.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that we're opening up to this question because I feel like so little of this is taught really anywhere. Women are not taught how to listen to their bodies. People are not taught how to listen to their bodies. Like it's nowhere in our school education. So eventually, like, we are doing it intuitively, like, oh crap, like my belly hurts. Something doesn't feel right here. Like I think women are naturally very intuitive when we're listening and are trusting ourselves. And I think we've been taught on how to listen for when it's not right. Like we'll have like that sixth spidey sense that's like, ooh, something's not right here, or this doesn't feel good. And I think on the flip side, like teaching ourselves when it is right,
Mm,
where does that yumminess live? And for me, I feel a lot of it in the sacral, actually, like in my root. Like there's like an excitement when I meet certain people um, that is like very palpable. And I've learned that there's that full body yes, where my system's like, oh my God, like we really, really vibe. This is the right time. We're connecting on so many different levels and it's just easy. And then there's like a whole middle ground of times where like things are right, but like the timing's a little bit off, and then there's like another part that's just, it's not right. So I'm curious if you've learned to wait for those full body yeses, and if you feel like that's kind of where the sales are just kind of effortless, where you've seen that correlation, or is it about like that whole middle arena of, hey, it's not quite right yet, but I'm going to keep checking in and we're just going to cultivate and nurture this until it is a yes?
yes. So I both. So one of the terms that we use a lot in sales is ideal customer profile.
Mm-hmm.
And the gist of it for folks that aren't familiar is just like understanding who is most likely to buy now, to buy at the right price point, to renew or be a source of referrals, like who really is the best possible client. And I think in this context, like your best possible client is one who evokes that in you, where it is not just easy and effortless. It is like it fills your cup.
Yeah.
Like you end the conversation and you're just like,
Yes. And
like it,
everyone's like, it's a go. There's not a lot of negotiations. Things happen
yes,
quickly. So
like you
how do
were,
you go finding those people? Like, how does that end up? What have you found to be the way that you can consciously business development develop your business in a way that feels good and is making space for those really aligned conversations?
yeah, a couple of things. One is that in order to make space for those conversations, you do have to be really willing to say no.
Yeah.
Like you have to be willing to admit when something isn't right, and not like isn't right now, where you're just like, I would not look forward to phone calls with that person.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
yes.
and that's scary, right? Like, particularly
Yeah.
if you're in that solopreneur entrepreneurial phase and like you need to put money in the bank, it can be really scary to say no to opportunities, but trust that saying no to opportunities that don't spark that joy in you makes more space for the ones that do. So I would say that. And I would say the other piece is to be like unabashedly yourself. For me, that's on LinkedIn and TikTok. And it was so scary, Katya. Like it was such a terrifying process. And it's a journey I've really been on now for about 4 years of posting consistently, where at first it was so scary for me to post that I just would leave comments. And that's how I started finding my voice. And then like the first year was really about me taking back my story and
Yeah.
making it not something that I was like ashamed of or felt like I was a victim, but really being like, no, those terrible things that I experienced or that happened to me are the fuel that now fires me, that allows me to tell these stories, create that space, give other people permission, whatever it is. And when I left corporate and went full time a little less than 2 years ago, it was another round of having to really confront that fear, because I knew that by talking about human rights, by talking about the fact that I create my content based on my hormonal cycle, that was going to turn off and turn away a lot of people. And it was difficult to get back to those aren't the people you want anyway,
Yeah.
particularly when the space I sell into is 91% male. The chief revenue officer role is 91% male. So I knew I was going to immediately eliminate a huge portion of the people in that addressable market that I need to give me revenue. But it makes more space to attract the right people. And at the end of the day, like I can't live a lie. Like I can't create content that doesn't feel right to me. And I think it was a Brene Brown book, maybe. But she said, or no, it was actually from Quit Like a Woman, which is like one of my favorite books of all time. Where she says it is always better to let other people down than to let yourself down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
I love that
yeah,
quote.
that's something that I come back to. What I
Mm.
what about you? Like, how do you strike that balance or maybe overcome some of that fear that is natural, I think?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm an immigrant here. So my family came over to the US with like $300, no language, no money. Like really, it's crazy to think about like $300, like for a family of four, to come and start like that. It's like a true, because I immigrated from Russia. So um, I just, I think a lot about the role of money, safety, wealth, building wealth, and how to heal that relationship with money, and how much of that I've had to do and now support my clients with doing. So that way you're not forcing things or pushing things or going after things that are not fully aligned just for fear that you're not going to hit your number or that the worst case scenario is going to happen. So I think, once I was able to heal through that and really start to get into the art of like manifesting and attracting and surrendering and knowing that my main job, and in human design, I love human design for this reason, like I'm a responder. So if I show up at an event, my main job is just to show up and be completely myself, and the rest will happen naturally. So my role is to put myself in environments that allow me to just show up and be me. And then on social media, I really, just like you, I know that the people that I'm for are going to really love me. And I'm totally okay with some people, everyone else, not being ready to dive in. And that's the thing with investing yourself. There's also a lot of fear that comes up for women when it comes to coaching, because it's a time where they actually are putting their dollars behind themselves, not something else in their business, not their kids, not their families. So there's a lot of limiting beliefs that come up in that kind of environment. And it's often the first step in them unlocking a lot of other financial abundance, because now they're willing to double down on themselves. And I find that really fascinating, and like money energetics to be super fascinating. Like wherever we have that stress point and that friction point. And I'm curious to hear from the audience, like what your relationship is like with money, with sales, that pressure, how you play with that pressure. And like, I think as women, like alchemize it to be fun and joyful as you're doing your business development, as opposed to that like old school way where it's oppressive and limiting and fearful. And like the engine that it's run by is based on, you have to hit your number, you have to do this, you have to do it. It's just, I think creativity is very stifled in those kind of strict boundaries. So we have to let go a little bit to let it come in. And we have to kind of trust that when we're being ourselves, we're authentic and true to our work, and we do high caliber work, that's going to lead to that attraction. I will say this much. I love intentionally pursuing things. And even though I leave a lot of space to receive, I just find it really enjoyable to make my intentions clear. And I think as women, it's really powerful when we articulate what we want and stand in our worth. So having that balance of letting things come, and then maybe 20% of the time I'm like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with this woman. She's so awesome. I want to be her coach. I'm going to just tell her, like, yeah, I'd really love to work with you. And then you see how that resonates. And typically a lot of women are very receptive to being spoken to directly. If you're working with women, if you're working with men, I'd ask Leslie, because she works with a lot more men than I do.
It's great. There's so many egos. I didn't anticipate how big the egos would be selling to CROs, because I've spent my entire career selling in really dominated fields. Like I stood up and then owned the energy portfolio for like 7 years at a global business intelligence company. I sold to CFOs, like Fortune 500 CFOs, CPOs. So I've been in these like really like white cis het male dominated spaces, and they're also really rich and really educated.
Yes, but there's a lot of entitlement there.
There's
and everyone's like selling
entitlement and way less ego in those spaces than there are with like the CRO of a $12 million company. It's kind of blowing my mind to like navigate this space. But here's why. I think it's because there's so little psychological safety in sales.
Yeah.
So like if you miss a quarter as the CFO of a Fortune 250 organization, it's highly unlikely that you're going to get fired. You probably won't even get like talked to. They'll just be like, how are we going to turn it around? If you miss a quarter as a VP of sales or a CRO, that very much could cost you your job. So I think the lack of psychological safety is reflected in the ego, which is a false ego, which is then reflected in putting up a wall, because they are so afraid of being seen as not knowing everything and not knowing the answers, or being seen as like replaceable. So I'm going to lead with grace, but man, they test me. Natalia also found this quote. So thank you so much for doing that. Quite a powerful quote. I want to stay on this like theme of scarcity, or like scarcity
Yeah.
mindset for a
Yeah.
bit, because I think it's common. Certainly, I know it's something I've struggled with. I really struggled with fears around financial security and
Yes.
scarcity. Um, and it's so interesting. I was at a women's retreat like 2 years ago when I first started the business, and I shared that I was really struggling with um, finances. I don't think I said scarcity. I think I said I have questions about finances for the business, and I don't feel like I know as much about small business finances as I'd like to. And I'm a person that the more knowledge I have, the more confident I feel in the choices I'm making. And everybody assumed that it meant that it's because I spent too much money. And I was like, no, my issue is that I'm afraid to spend money. I have a
Hmm.
huge runway that I need to be reinvesting in the business or investing in myself. And I'm so afraid to spend it because it feels safer to let it sit in a bank account, which is so false.
Yeah.
But like, how do folks start talking to themselves about overcoming that fear?
Oh my God, it's such an interesting topic. It reminds me of my sister, actually. She's like a hoarder. She'll have like, a Dolce and Gabbana jacket from like 15 years ago, and it's not in our size anymore, but it's still in the closet. And I'm like, when are we going to get rid of this? And there's like an old pair of all of these things that are she's unable to let go of because there's this feeling of um, just like holding on, and I had to do a lot of healing around my relationship with money, and I'm still in that journey for sure. But something that I think about is money as energy. And the reality is that some crazy stat, I'd say like over 80 or 90% of money is not physical. It's all digital. It's just like numbers on a screen. It's like not even real. I'm not in the US, our money isn't even backed by anything. It's just like it's the energy that money has over us. It's the power that money has over us. It's what does this money allow me to do? So whenever I'm making a purchase, I will think, does this purchase lead to an expansion, or does it lead to like a judgy contraction? Where I'm like, ooh, that was like not really a priority, and you're not even really going to enjoy that. And that was just like someone served you an ad on Instagram and now you bought this thing that you didn't even need. Or is it, I am taking my daughter to Germany to see Taylor
Yeah.
Swift, which is like a life-changing
Is that
experience.
really a thing?
Yes. I surprised her courtesy of Ashley Logan yet again, my queen. Surprised her on New Year's Eve. She's a diehard Taylor Swift fan, like beyond. Taylor Swift changed her life. She found her confidence. She found her voice. She overcame depression, anxiety, so many things because of Taylor Swift. I can't even tell you. And of course, her mom um, and other therapists. But Taylor was in there. And I surprised her. And I'm like, I know this trip is going to be expensive. I know it's going to be 3 weeks in Europe with my daughter, but to have that time, to have that memory, it doesn't even register. The fear of the money spent doesn't even register because I know the impact of the memories and the experience is far greater. So that would be the invitation. It's just to think the next time you're looking at something to spend, listen back to your body, see if your sacral is turned on by that purchase too. Like there's a lot of wisdom in our sacral, obviously our belly, our heart, and just like what would it feel like to pour energy like that into yourself just for you?
Mm,
Because you
that
deserve it.
is going to be a new. But so that's it. Because you deserve to cultivate the experiences in your life that are those core memories that allow
Oh,
you to root in your most important relationships, that allow you to grow. If we're thinking about like the business development, how you can grow
yes.
professionally, like buying those courses or classes, like you deserve it. And it's so interesting that you ended on that phrase because that was one of my big turning points, is that I realized that I didn't feel like I deserved
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
spend
It's
that
that
money.
worthiness.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
something really powerful just to get grounded into ROI and business metrics. The most successful thing I did last year, what revenue wise, was go to Sundance. Sundance is not even in my industry. My sister's the screenwriter. I went to Sundance and at a party at 2 in the morning, where I am sure most of the people in that room were off their rocker, I landed my two biggest clients of the year at a party at 2 in the morning, the same party. And it was literally, hi, I'm Katya. This is what I do. And it was like, holy shit, we're going to work together. And we did. And I think about that. You think about that travel is good for business. Expansion is good for business. Joy is good for business. Vacation is good for business. Family time is good for business, right? We have to have we get to have a life that is life first, work second, I think.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that way, when we're showing up for our jobs, we are bringing a level of groundedness, clarity, connection, purpose,
Joy,
joy,
a
pleasure,
wholehearted life.
wholehearted life. Like, who wants to work with someone that has nothing else going on in their life? We're drawn to the person in the business, and it's not just about what that person does professionally. Like, we're also drawn to who they are. That's why my tagline is to like rediscover joy and reimagine success, because I think without joy connection to our work, we're just not as magnetic, compelling. We don't enjoy the process as much. And for me, joy is created through experiences and fashion.
I love that. One of my ins for this year, and it's really been like an in for my entire life, is in investing in experiences over things. Like, I don't need to buy another Instagram bathing suit that most surely won't fit. I do need to treat myself. Like tomorrow, for instance, I'm going out with one of my best friends who I've not had a chance to connect with face to face in like 3 months. And we are going to get dressed up and go and have a fancy cocktail at the lounge.
Oh, oh my God. And
like, I get to feel beautiful. I get to feel confident. I get to reconnect.
yeah.
I get to treat myself. And it's like, even, like even with Uber, even with shared rides and the cocktail and everything, it's going to be like $50. And it's like, I could have spent that $50 on a crappy Instagram bathing suit, or I could have spent that $50 like creating this experience and this memory and this
Absolutely.
opportunity connection.
And watch who's at the bar. And watch who's at the bar when you're in your essence.
Who knows?
And I think that's what happens when we play more. So one of the pieces of advice, I have a client of mine who runs a PR agency. She's trying to attract new business. And she's doubled her business in the past year, which is amazing. She's working less, she's making more. That's the dream. So thrilled with that for her. And we were talking, and she's a big golfer. And she also really loves to play tennis, and she also really loves to ski. So she's on a ski vacation with her family, and she literally meets a family that's also skiing, starts talking to the guy. He's starting a tech company, he needs PR. How did it happen? It was happening when they were both in their most relaxed state. So I said, why don't you create a golf competition or a golf outing or a charity event and bring together women, men in golf, and let people really get to know you and other parts of you? And so I think in terms of how do we like harness this conscious feminine intuition, I'd say like a big bottom line is, where can you bring more play into your life and match your passions and your curiosities with the types of people that you're looking to reach, so that way it feels like really symbiotic and joyful for you, right?
Yeah, you're not forcing it.
You're not forcing it. You're bringing people into your world, which in reality is what we're doing on social. It's what we're doing when we meet people. We're bringing them into our world so they can get to know us and experience something. I'm curious on your end, what kind of interesting creative tactics have you seen work with the sales teams you've built that feel a little bit maybe away from the wake up and dial?
I'm going to answer that question, but I want to stay on the story that you just shared for 1 second,
Oh yeah.
because golf is something that generally is associated with being like the guys on the golf
Yeah.
course. And so I would say yes and to that, because if your end is like getting your nails done or like going to a yoga retreat, or right? Like I think it is so societally acceptable to spend that money on the steak dinner or on the golf trip. And it is less socially acceptable to spend that money on experiences that are generally considered to be more female centric experiences. Spend that money. If the thing that you love most is a meditation retreat, is a yoga retreat, is a book club, is whatever it is, like that is just because that's not historically where deals have been made, does not mean that that is not where your people are for your deals to be made.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think that's brilliant. I mean, if you're selling to women and you emailed someone that you've been building a relationship and said, let's go do a Manny meeting, my treat, girl, sign me up. Sign
Correct,
me up.
right?
Let's go do a dance class together. I mean, I think that's the thing with the women. We're really creative. So we have to play and have fun. Just like LinkedIn is a place for that for you. It works because it's an expansion. If it was energetically a contraction, it would feel stifling. You would feel tired from it. You would feel depleted from it, and it wouldn't be as successful as it is. So, where can we find the focus on that expansion part? So that way we're not sitting there at our computers being like, I need to grow the business. I need to grow the business.
Yes.
And then we're sort of like, it feels forced.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's part of the answer to your question. Like, what are some of those creative ways that you can not just wait for business to come to you, but to
Yeah.
create the environments where, I mean, it's still coming to you, but like that
Yeah.
you're going
You get
out and you're,
to do things for it.
yeah, yes, exactly. So I think hosting like a paint night
Awesome. Yeah.
or
Community
something
building.
like that, and inviting, 20 of your ideal people that you look at their profiles and you think, this person's so cool. Like, what if we got to work together? Well, what if you reached out, and what if you invited them to this paint night or whatever it is? And what if that was the opportunity for you to find that shared connection and decide what type of partnership made the most sense. So I think that's part of it. And I have something that I have been doing for the last 15 years without fail, that is something until recently I've only ever seen other female sellers doing, and it is writing handwritten notes. It is
Who do you
such a
send them to?
pattern interrupt. I have sent them to prospects. Like, I actually just sent one a few weeks ago to a company that I want to work with, and I was introduced to the CRO. And even though I got a referral from one of their employees, and I did the cold email and I did the LinkedIn and I engaged with their posts and I did a cold call, they ignored everything. So I sent them a really thoughtful handwritten note that was much more personal. They replied to my email,
Hell
right?
yeah.
Because it's a pattern interrupt. So I've used them for prospecting. One of my favorite ways that I use them is when I was in an enterprise sales cycle, which meant that once I closed a deal, there was a handover to the customer success person that would then manage the relationship. I would send them a thank you for trusting me note.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
I use them for anybody that's on my book club as a thank you for sharing those vulnerable pieces of yourself. I use them when I'm wrapping up relationships. Like, I just had 2 contracts end at the end of January. And on Friday, I put thank you cards in the mail to them. Like, thank you for spending that time and money with me. I use them
A
all
lot.
over the place. And you want to know what's really interesting? On multiple occasions, Katya, people have then posted my thank you note on LinkedIn. And then that has created more conversations because people think, wow, I want to work with the type of person
Yeah. That takes the time.
that takes the time.
Yeah, it's so interesting because if you think about that activity, it's so heart driven. It's a heartstring connection. It's really thoughtful. It's really authentic to you, and then it works. And I'm curious
Yeah.
from the audience, like, what is something that you've done that's been like creative, playful, and effective for you when you've been building your business? Like, is there an example or a story or like, some way that you found a way to like, I hate the term kill two birds with one stone. So we'll just rephrase that with like feed two birds with one meal. I feel like I need a better saying for that. But I'm just really curious to see what else has worked. And, it kind of leads me to one of the things I think about a lot is like, where can we simplify to amplify? Like, where do we
Mhm.
make things more challenging for ourselves by creating a lot of busy work and creating a lot of friction between us and the sale? When in fact, it really doesn't need to be that complicated and it doesn't need to be that difficult. So
Yes.
would love to hear what comes up for you with that.
An immediate yes. I am not kidding you. When I was writing content right before we got on to this phone call, because I just had some ideas that I wanted to get out because I have been really inspired by a bunch of conversations I've been having this week. And the post that I wrote right before we got on the call was that being direct tactfully is a skill set.
Yeah, that's love.
Right? Like, it is love to ask the questions out loud that you need the answers to, because the person you're talking to probably needs that clarity as well.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it is a skill to call out the elephant in the room, because be sure you're not the only one that feels it if there's like awkwardness or tension. So it's so interesting because I was talking about the value of directness, and I was really thinking about that being like a skill, but a skill that I don't feel like I've ever really heard anybody talking about. But that is a way to like amplify by simplifying. Don't try to come up with the most perfect way to ask a question. Like, just say the thing that you
Yeah,
need to know the answer to.
absolutely. And I love this, like, there's a lot of this happening in marketing right now. Like, everything I'm seeing is like simplify, simplify, simplify. Oh yes, thank you, Natalia. Help two birds fly.
That's good.
Thank
I
you.
like that. I was thinking we should ask
Oh,
ChatGPT afterwards to be like, come up with
100%.
new ways to, but that's a great one.
I've been seeing that a lot in marketing, like all these complicated funnels, and everyone's just like simplify everything that's been a seven step. Everyone's like, how do we, refine this? I mean, some of the most successful companies in the world have been successful because they found a way to simplify what they do and make it as frictionless as possible. So it's just like a question I ask myself all the time, like, where am I making this more complicated than it needs to be? And
Yeah.
the directness thing leads me to think of a woman named Fran Hauser, who's a mentor of mine and a friend, and was an advisor to Hey Mama for many years. And she wrote a book called The Myth of the Nice Girl. And in that book, it's been like a global best-selling book. She was like the president of Time Inc. and, really climbed the corporate ladder.
So cool.
And she's so amazing. Now she helps women publish their books. She's written several. And she talks about how um, like directness is kindness, right? That like it is really kind to be direct. And I think about the 15 principles of conscious leadership and that framework. And it also talks about candidness and how being a conscious leader means really having candid, open conversations. So it's kind of in the same vein as if you're thinking it, say it. If it's on your mind and you need an answer, or you are towards the end of the call and you're like, wait a minute, what's our next step?
Yeah.
Like I have calls all the time with women where it just feels ambiguous. And I say this on the calls, I say, what would feel good in my system is for us to align on when we're speaking next.
Yeah.
What would feel good in my system is if you would come back to me by this date with an answer.
Yes.
So that I'm not left in a state of like, I don't love that when you're getting on a call with someone and it's just like so open-ended. I think
Yeah.
like we have this flow. The guardrails on it are a little bit of structure that gives people a follow-up, a check-in time, a clear expectation. That's very kind.
Yeah.
That's very
Or
kind to lead with
even
that.
like, Katya, I'm sensing that this doesn't feel like something you're really excited about.
Yes, yes, yes. That honesty of like,
Yes.
hey, I'm sensing it's not the right time. Or, I think of it this way. If a woman, man, client, etc., if they can't like lead themselves through the finish line,
Mm.
right? Because there's a lot of space in between. I think I want to do this to doing it. If they can't lead themselves through there for whatever reason, that's on them, like where they're at, what's their priority. And so in the past, I think I would take a little bit more of it on. Like, hey, like let me support. How can I help? And now I've just kind of released that a little bit. And I just put a lot of trust in my clients to make their decisions, to communicate them, and to be a leader from the very beginning of the start of our relationship.
Mm.
Right? Because
Not.
we are here to like improve our leadership skills. And if I'm an
Yeah.
executive coach, then it's interesting to see how someone engages in that process. Are they doing what they said they're going to do? Are they paying when they said they were going to pay? Are
Yeah.
they leaving someone left in the wind? Because that means I'm not the only person they're doing that to. And that gives me a way to kind of detach while also acknowledging, like, you know, this might be where you are and how you do business, but it's not how I do business. And so maybe we take a beat and we come back when you're ready to lead yourself through this process or not.
Oof. Okay, let me ask you this. Um, because in that context, you are really relinquishing a lot of control. And a few moments ago, you were talking about these, like 7-step funnels, which
Yeah.
are really about control. And when we
Yeah.
think about being a business owner, or particularly like sales and the sales process, historically, it's really been about control. And this isn't me thinking this, like, this is very literally like what's been taught in books. This is how to control your prospect, control a conversation, right?
Run
And
your pipeline.
yes, yes, everything, control, control. And I think it so often comes from a place in sales specifically, that there's this narrative that for us to win, somebody has to lose.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And prospects aren't putting up with that anymore. Like, it's win-win, we're in a partnership, this is collaborative, or it's nothing.
Yeah.
And I would like, have you seen that? Does that feel right to you that like we're evolving away from that?
Yes, absolutely. I think terms have to feel good for everyone, you know? The terms of the deal have to feel right. The timing has to be right. A lot of stars have to align for a deal to get done. And depending on the size of the deal and how the stakes that are involved, there's a lot of different factors. But I think at the essence of sales, it's really partnerships. It's like honestly not even sales. I think sales is like an outdated term because we're all building partnerships and exchanges. Someone's giving you money, you're giving them a service, or you're giving them money and they're giving you a service. So there's always that exchange, and the exchange has to feel, they have to understand the value. So first, you have to know as a as a partnerships person, when is it actually about the price and when is it about the value?
Yeah.
You know, you have to be
It's
willing to have.
always about the value.
Yeah, because people will be like, "Oh, it's the cost, it's the cost." And it's like, it's very rarely ends up being about the cost. Sometimes it does, but um, I think right now we're in an age of the Aquarian leader, which started in 2020, 2012, which is a very heart-led leadership style. It's very collaborative, it's win-win. And Piscean leadership, which was what we had before, was very hierarchical. It was top down. I have the answers. You come to me. I'm the winner. You're the loser. like controlling all the power. And we had that for thousands of years. So the reason that the feminine is rising, we have women rising in leadership. There's the most number of women CEOs that have ever been CEOs. There's the most number of lawyers that have ever been, even though still less than men. There's just been a lot of progress. I think women naturally possess innate abilities to listen, to feel, to understand, to to empathize, and to try to create a scenario where they're not just like doing the deal at all costs, even if it sucks for you, but I get the money, so screw you. Like, if someone is like that, they probably have seen that behavior or have been in a culture that's really trained like that. But most women leaders that I know, they care so deeply. They care so, so deeply about their clients. And I think the clients feel that. And when we are creating that win-win partnership, it's a partnership. It's not, it's like you're married, you're like compromise and, really great communication and really great flow and all those things I think have to be present for a great partnership to get done. But yeah, I really hope we're moving away from that because A, I just think it's less effective for business. B, if you've ever worked at a sales job, just for context, I used to do cold calling at my first tech company that I worked at. I had to make 100 calls a day. And then before that, and I was the number one person in sales there for 7 years. I brought in half the company's revenue, all team of men. And I was 20. I was super young. I was like in my early 20s because I cared so much about the client. So that's what set me apart is I just like loved the clients so much and I just wanted them to win. And I really believed in the product. It was a great product. But before that, I did door-to-door sales for my sister's court reporting company in New York City, where I would go. I was in college and I would knock on the door and I'd be like, hi, I'm with DL Reporting and we're a court reporting service. And I would like sneak into the buildings. Like I didn't know how else to get access to these people. So I would like go to one office and then knock on the door and then go to the other office. So true humble beginnings here.
Oh my word.
Yeah. Yeah, I paid my dues.
I think that is the hardest of all sales jobs. That is like the hill I will die on. That anybody that has had to doorstep prospects, they're like the true heroes of the sales world because that takes.
Yeah, that takes something else. I won't, I actually really enjoyed it. I find sales and business development to be really fun, but it was intimidating. It was scary, and it probably wasn't even that successful because I didn't know exactly what I was doing. But never underestimate the power of meeting someone in person. And so now door-to-door sales has changed to like just, hey, I'm in front of you now. Let me establish a connection with you in a few minutes that allows us to have a good follow-up chat. And how is that person reading your energy? Do they feel like they're just trying to be sold to? Do they feel like you are someone they'd enjoy to work with? And that goes back to like feeling connected to yourself and feeling grounded in who you are. So when you're showing up in relation to others, you can be authentic while standing in the product you're offering and not feel insecure or, oh, I don't even want to talk to them. I can't do this. They're not going to want to hear from me. I don't want to go up to that panelist. They're probably busy, right? Like there's a million ways to not go up to the panelist after the panel. We've all been there.
I know we're right at time, but let me see if I can bring a couple of the things that we've talked about together, and then I want to hear what you would add. So obviously, like a bigger topic, how are we tapping in to that female intuition? How are we being intentional about inviting that into our lives and into our sales process? And one of the things I felt came up a lot was creativity, like giving yourself to be like giving yourself permission to be creative, and not just permission, like seek out ways to foster those connections that are maybe things you haven't seen before because the world that we're selling in was not necessarily built for us. I think that was a nice theme. And also the theme of like helping, not selling. Like none of the things that we talked about today were about selling people, right? We're not going to force we're not going to force somebody to buy something they don't want. We're not going to sell them on an idea that isn't for them or for us as a partnership. It's really about like how can we help them find us?
Yeah.
How can we help them maybe as a guide, as
Yeah.
a trusted advisor to get, but it's helping over selling. And then I think like one of the things that you said that really struck me, Katya, was just about like that feeling we get. Like you end a call and you're just jazzed, like you can feel
Yeah.
the energy rippling through our body and that like whole body yes. And not every single call is going to be like that. But maybe if we look at our sales calls on a spectrum of like full body yes to full body no.
Yes.
And like
Yeah.
that's the new way to decide how to forecast a sale. Those are my three big takeaways. What were the big themes that really resonated with you?
I love that. I think the big themes that resonated with me is, in the beginning, we talked about getting in flow and creating more movement and energy and motion, um, to find a way to get in that state where, you're feeling energized and you're feeling good for the day. Like we have to take care of ourselves first and foremost. Ladies, drink your water, eat your vitamins, listen to music that lights you up, love yourself. Like I think all of those self-care things are must haves, not nice to haves for us to really have like good lit up days. Um, and taking breaks throughout the day too. I think something that came to me that we actually didn't cover, but I'll just add really quickly is um, listen to your field of who comes to mind. Listen to your dreams. Pay attention to who comes into your head. Do you ever have that feeling you're just sitting there and all of a sudden you thought about someone and then they emailed you?
Yeah.
I think like we just need to, that listening is such a strength. So like paying attention to the signs of where you feel called to go next. Bringing that play and creativity, I think, is so, so important. And just not being scared to be direct and to be clear
Mm.
is really powerful. And of course, we didn't talk about fostering community with other women, but I feel like that goes without saying. Just creating a really strong sisterhood of women that are speaking your name in the rooms that you're not in
Yes.
is essential. That is like why I do the work that I do. Everything is about creating community and sisterhood because when women are in circle together and where we know what our strengths are and our friends know what our magic is, we don't have to work that hard because other people are thinking about us too.
Oh, so good. Honestly, the day that I stopped fighting against other women for the one seat at the table that men were allowing us to have, and I started fighting for more seats for me and every other woman,
Mm.
it was a day that fundamentally changed my life.
Yes. Yes, yes,
Ugh.
yes. So much
Oh, this
space for
is incredible. I am so happy that we did this. I am so grateful to Erin Gallagher and Ashley Logan for creating the spaces and the connections that allowed us to meet, that allowed us to bring this conversation to the folks that joined us and to everybody that joined us. Thank you so much for prioritizing this time in your day and joining us for this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. This was such an honor. I'm such a big fan of yours. And we had that full body yes when we spoke, and that's what led to this conversation. So please stay in touch. I'd love to hear from anyone that this conversation resonated with. And yeah, if you're looking for a community of feminine leaders, I'd love to welcome you to the KL & Co fam. And Leslie, you are just a gem. I'm so happy that you are a voice in the sales world. I think it's a much needed voice. You're obviously a top LinkedIn voice. You're such an inspiration to me and so many. And you're bringing so much of this feminine energy to the mix. And I know it's making an impact. So thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.